From the headquarters of Tell Us Your English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Suini Gray. We start in Brazil, where thousands of people have come out to protest after councilwoman and activist Marielle Franco was gunned down in Rio de Janeiro. Outside the city hall, people expressed their anger and solidarity.
Mulher! Mulher! Negra! Negra! Ativista! Ativista! Lésbica! Lésbica!
They placed flowers on the steps of the local government building as a memorial. Protesters are blaming the military police or paramilitary groups linked to the police for her death. Franco belonged to the left-wing Socialism and Liberty Party. More protests are expected throughout the night in Rio de Janeiro, with protests taking place in other cities.
What this death does is to shut up those who criticize, who dare speak of evils, atrocities. Marielle was one of those people who spoke up, who defended blacks, the poor and people who live in the favelas.
We are sad because today a black woman who had so much hope in the struggle and who lived in a favela was taken by all the injustice and militarism that exists in Rio de Janeiro. We are not going to allow this to continue. Marielle is here. Marielle is here. Marielle is here.
This question of democracy, justice, law that the country is facing, because the 4 shots that hit Marielle Franco also struck our democracy. They struck at the dreams of black women to live with dignity in this country that has historically ignored the poor.
Marielle Franco's coffin was carried through the crowd by friends and colleagues from her party Peace Sol. They included Marcelo Friso, the party's elected representative for the state of Rio, who has himself received numerous death threats. Last month, President Michel Temer ordered the Brazilian army to take control of security in Rio de Janeiro. Marielle Franco was shot in the head, along with her driver, by 2 attackers who drove up alongside her car in downtown Rio. In an official statement, the party said they had reason to believe the murder was executed by members of the Brazilian army or military police. As an activist, Franco regularly criticized the army and police for systematically violating human rights.
We don't know about any type of threats that she could have received. It's up to the police now to understand how something like this can happen in a case when there weren't any clear threats.
And we have more from Andre Vieira.
Last night, Rio de Janeiro councilwoman Marielle Franco, one of the most well-known human rights activists in this country, was murdered. Social movements are demanding an immediate investigation into this case. Marielle Franco was a resident of Favela La Mare, a favela which is among the poorest communities. She was the 5th most voted councillor of the city and the main person behind the lower house investigation of the militarization process of Rio de Janeiro. Today, many demonstrations are being held in Rio and across the country to reject this atrocious crime of the assassination of Marielle, who was opposed to President Temer's administration and also to local governments which commanded the military intervention of Rio. She was a black feminist activist who fought for people's rights. As a result, international social organizations are demanding justice and have expressed solidarity to Marielle Franco's family. She will always be remembered as the activist who fought for poor people.
We thank Andre Vieira for that report. The Colombian government and the National Liberation Army have signed a joint statement agreeing to continue this round of talks until May 18th. The first day of peace talks in Quito laid the groundwork for a potential new ceasefire agreement. It is the major objective of the dialogues. The last ceasefire was agreed to in October of last year and lasted for 101 days.
Our aim is to push forward the agenda as much as possible to consolidate this process, so that the results of this presidential elections do not interrupt the work and the development of the people.
What we want, and we set out in the schedule for this next cycle, is that the strength of words will prevail and not the strength of force. We need to have a constructive dialogue that will allow the development of the agenda and finally and fully put an end to the armed conflict.
China wants to strengthen cooperation with the Caribbean. At the Association of Caribbean States Summit, the Chinese delegation says Beijing wants to work with the region to promote sustainable development. He highlighted initiatives such as the Joint Action Plan 2019 to 2031, which includes the funding of infrastructural projects in the Caribbean. The ACS meeting is taking place on the Venezuelan island of Margarita. The group has been working together for about 24 years. Our correspondent Freddy Gillies is at the talks in Margarita, and he has sent this report.
Welcome back to Margarita for this second day of this three-day ACS summit. There's been meetings and presentations throughout the day here today and of course yesterday. All preparations now are being put in place for the arrival of President Nicolas Maduro. He's expected here to close the ceremony tomorrow. He will be joined in that closing ceremony with Jorge Arias, Venezuela's foreign minister. He will be arriving here today. Obviously this summit is all about regional integration. Venezuela has long been and continues to be a key player in that. Best illustrated in the fact that they're hosting this year's summit for the ACS. That good faith has been responded to fairly recently, most notably with Antigua and Barbuda. They recently pulled out of a OAS summit on grounds of bias against Venezuela. That's just an example of how the Caribbean are responding to Venezuela's good faith. This summit is obviously all about integration, as opposed to that summit in OAS, which seems to be centered on exclusion, particularly regarding Venezuela. 68 countries are here, not just from the Caribbean, but from all over the world. It obviously ends tomorrow. We will bring you more updates then, so stay tuned.
Thanks, Freddy, for that report. We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The former Peruvian president, Alberto Fujimori, has been called as a witness in the trial of his ex-advisor, Vladimiro Montesinos. Fujimori appeared in court at the Callao Naval Base, where Montesinos is already serving a 25-year sentence for murder, abuse of power, and corruption. Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years in jail for human rights abuses in 2009. He has since been pardoned. However, if Fujimori does not comply, the consequences could be rough. Earlier, Jaime Herrera joined us from Lima, and he sent us this report.
Dictator Alberto Fujimori has been called to testify as a witness in the case against his former advisor, Vladimiro Montesinos. This is regarding the abduction of journalist Gustavo Gorriti. In 1992, when Fujimori staged a coup, he began his dictatorship by closing down Congress and the courts of justice. That sparked many protests by social groups and prominent figures, including Gorriti, who was taken from his home and detained at the Army's Intelligence Service headquarters. He wasn't told why he was detained, and at some point he said he feared that he would be killed. After a long time, Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years in prison for this case and other human rights abuses. Fujimori will need to provide more details in his testimony. If he doesn't attend, he could be fined or police could be sent to take him by force to declare this information.
There are also protests being lodged across the rest of the region. Some 10,000 people are demonstrating across Argentina, opposing the elimination of employment programs. Strikes have become all too common in the country as citizens criticize the government's reform plans. Union and labor groups mobilize in more than 80 parts of the country. They're also calling for genuine long-term job creation. And clashes broke out between riot police and dozens of people just north of the Peruvian capital of Lima. Dozens of officers were deployed to remove around 2,000 alleged squatters who've laid claim to land they say has been unoccupied for 12 years. The police used tear gas to disperse the crowds. The native Lenca people in Honduras are protesting against the construction of a hydroelectric plant located in Ritoca, just south of the capital. The project affects the one river in the area, which is their only water supply. Thousands of villagers are taking turns to protest throughout the day and night. Another issue facing the region, border disputes. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera has held a meeting with former leaders to discuss this dispute with Bolivia over sea access. This case is before the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Former Chilean leaders like Eduardo Frei, Ricardo Lago and Michelle Bachelet attended the event at the Moneda Palace. The political leaders talked about the position they'll take at the court. The case begins on March 19th. After the meeting, Chilean President Sebastián Piñera said the country is united on their position.
Regarding the legal dispute presented to the International Court of Justice, I want to reaffirm, once again, the Chilean arguments and position based on legal and historical evidence, and I want to recognize the support of all former presidents of Chile in the legitimate defense of our rights and our interests.
Domestic workers in Panama have formed a new union which will enable them to make progress in their struggle for labor rights.
At dusk, domestic workers in one of the wealthiest areas in the city go out to work, accompanied by their children and pets. They are among the most ignored workers in the country.
Bosses and even the government have denied that domestic workers' conditions are poor here in the capital.
64,000 women and 7,000 men are registered as domestic workers in Panama. Minimum wages for this group are in between $250 and $275 per month, depending on the region, when other working groups earn around $600, while the basic cost of living for an average costs $350. Data shows that 85% of these workers lack social security, and many of them don't have vacations or days off.
This union is trying to change these abuses. Many workers don't receive severance pay and their labor rights are not respected.
The union was created this month and is supported by the General Autonomous Center of Panamanian Workers, or CGTP, following Agreement 189 of the International Labour Organization.
A domestic worker's job is just as hard as your job as a journalist or as a teacher. Agreement 189 looks after these and states that they must be paid a minimum wage equal to what a factory or a commerce worker earns.
The union already has around 100 members, and they believe this is the start of improvements in wages and working conditions.
The Labor Ministry of Nicaragua has implemented salary reforms for 2018 after private companies and workers weren't able to reach an agreement.
Like most Nicaraguans, Jamie works at least 8 hours each day just to make ends meet. So he welcomes the news that minimum wage will increase by more than 10%.
That is the regular yearly increase, and it's good because prices keep going up. I think it's perfect for our home's economy and our families. They must keep doing it every year.
The reform applies to 9 sectors of the economy, including agriculture, fishing, mining, micro and small artisanal businesses.
Increasing salaries is important because it improves our purchasing power. But we want to tell the unions that they are not succeeding in creating better employment policies. We ask them to not just focus on the whole year, but what can be done more immediately.
The salary reform is based on a law which calculates salary increases in relation with national inflation. More than 500,000 Nicaraguans will benefit from this.
There is not COSAP's first time trying to change this law. And let's remember that behind this, there is still a law of acquired right. We won't violate any of those laws.
The reform will be applied in 2 parts. The first part happened at the beginning of March, where people saw an increase of more than 5% in their wages. The next increase will come in September this year.
Just before the general elections in Antigua and Barbuda, the country's main opposition party, the United Progressive Party, is claiming that voters are being offered bribes to surrender their voter cards. Although UPP didn't directly accuse any party for this malpractice, there are 2 main contenders in the election, the UPP and Prime Minister Gaston Brown's Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party. The elections are due on March 21st. The UPP also said that any person engaged in bribery should be persecuted as it threatens electoral discipline. And the OAS Electoral Mission has published its preliminary report on the Grenada elections. The mission highlighted the need to strengthen certain aspects of the registration process to promote transparency and accountability in the electoral process. The mission also recommended that authorities introduce legal measures to guarantee gender equality, such as a gender quota. The UE Seismic Research Center has advised that there's a significant slowing down of volcanic activity at the Kikamjani underwater volcano, but the alert level remains at orange. Kikamjani has been showing signs of an impending eruption this week. The government of the island has imposed a 5-kilometer exclusion zone around the volcano. The volcano is located 8 kilometers off the coast of Grenada. It's directly under the shipping route between St. Vincent and Grenada. New unemployment statistics coming out of Guyana show women are at a severe disadvantage to men on all levels. A labor force survey has put Guyana's unemployment rate at 12%. Female unemployment stood at 15% in the country versus 10% for men. 28% of young women between the ages of 15 and 24 are out of work, and even women who were employed were at a disadvantage. Less than 40% of women are in managerial positions in the country. CARICOM and Germany have signed an agreement worth $33 million for marine protection in the Caribbean region. Secretary General Erwin LaRocque and Germany's ambassador to CARICOM, Holger Michael, signed the agreement in Georgetown, Guyana. It will provide a sustainable financing mechanism for the region. This fund will also be utilized for climate resilience projects. This is a significant contribution for the region, still struggling to recover after last year's hurricanes battered the region. From time to time throughout this month, we're going to look at the specifically unique space women inhabit in this world. Today, we turn our eyes towards sports and the women who play them. Joining us today is the media officer for the Windies women and former cricketer herself, Nasira Mohammed, who joins us live from the West Indies Women's Tour of New Zealand. So, Nasira, sportswomen around the world, from boxing to football, complain about the lack of respect they get for their sportsmanship. How does the Windies women team feel about the way they're perceived throughout the region, and do they feel sufficiently appreciated for the work that they do?
I think they feel sufficiently appreciated, but as we all know, There always can be more done to appreciate women and female athletes as we are. That being said, these women, let me tell you, they're superstars in their own right, individually and as a team, because we became the first team from the Caribbean to win the ICC Women's World T20 World Cup in India in 2016. Something that, we have never done before, and we've always had a women's cricket probably about 15 years of women's cricket. And it was led by Stephanie Taylor from Jamaica, who herself recently broke a record. She's now the 5th highest run scorer in women's 50-over cricket in the world.
So, Sarah, let's go back to the issue of women's sports between men's sports. Male sports get more support than their female counterparts. Why do you think that is, and what can we do to address that?
Well, as a society, the Caribbean always tends to lean towards the patriarchal aspect of it, and it's something that's just been ingrained in our culture in the Caribbean. And I think this bunch of women, since their title in 2016, have been breaking the mold, as we call it, at Cricket West Indies. They're showing women in the Caribbean and women cricketers around the world that, despite you come from a small region, despite you come from, not a first world country, but once you believe in yourself, you can do it. And a lot of the territorial boards within the Caribbean region are taking stock of it, because last year in Trinidad and Tobago, our home country, Soini, we held the first ever franchise T20 tournament for women in the Caribbean, and it was very successful. There's going to be a repeat of it in 2018 in May month, and it has been sanctioned by Cricket West Indies.
So, Nasira, there seems to be some stigma attached to women in sport, that it's not seen as being good female behavior. So, talk to me about what we need to do to encourage women to play, women of all ages actually, to play sports.
Well, Saini, it goes back to my point of it being a social issue. And as part of the Windies women's cricket team, we're doing what we can to show young women and women of all ages that if you really want to play a sport, not only is it now socially acceptable, but it shows that if you have something, you really want it, you dream it, you can achieve it. It doesn't matter your circumstances. Yes, not everybody might be able to financially afford it, or they might be afraid to take the first step in going against their family's wishes. But in this day and age that we live in, I think everybody should be given the opportunity to follow their dreams, whether it be sport, it be you becoming a doctor, a lawyer, own your own business, whatever it is. But it's a stigma that we as women have to take the forefront and the charge with, that if we really want to achieve something, we have to be the ones to take the first step and not depend on men to say, okay, let's give them a chance. We have to take the chance ourselves.
Thank you so much, Nasira. We've been talking to Nasira Mohammed. She's in New Zealand for the Windies tour of that area. She's the media officer for the Windies women team. Thank you, Nasira. Time now for a short break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
If you're a Brit or a US citizen, you better be ready to eat some humble pie before entering this shoe shop in Ramallah. British citizens are required to apologise and accept their country's responsibility for the Balfour Declaration, which saw the establishment of Israel and the division of Palestine, while US citizens have to grovel over their president's decision to recognise Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
عدم ثقتي في هاي الحكومات توجهت للشعب، هي مخاطبة للشعب وليس إساءة. إنه أنتم يا شعب اللي بتختاروا هاي بشكل ديمقراطي للحكومات تاعتكم واللي بتوفركم هاي الحقوق على حساب حقوق أخرى، على حساب اضطهاد شعوب أخرى، على دعم احتلال بشع.
In Arab culture, the shoe is considered dirty, both because it's on the ground and because of its association with the foot, the lowest part of the body. This being the case, owner Ahmad Al-Hajj Mohammed has taken delight in naming some of the shoes on offer in his shop after Trump, Balfour and US Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Ouch!
Welcome back. A pedestrian bridge has collapsed at Florida International University in Miami-Dade County, trapping people and cars underneath. The bridge crashed down across 6 lanes of traffic, crushing at least 8 cars and killing 7 people. The Miami-Dade Fire Service Department said they're working to secure the structure while searching for more victims.
At approximately 1:30 this afternoon, we received a call for a collapsed bridge. Our units responded to find 8 trapped vehicles under the bridge. At this time, we've transported 8 victims to hospitals. I can assure you that our teams are still in rescue and search mode. They're still working the debris pile. We have search dogs in place. We have technical listening devices.
Today, an event took place at the Bolivarian Military Academy in the Venezuelan capital, honoring the late Hugo Chavez on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of his burial, or what is referred to in Venezuela as his planting. From there, the flame of the commander Hugo Chavez was transferred to the 4F Mountain Barracks. During the event, President Nicolas Maduro and PSUV President Diosdado Cabello gave comments on the legacy of the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution. Well, that brings us to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you so much for watching.